Hey guys, welcome to episode 8 of our For the Parents podcast. We're going to be talking all about emotions today. So that's going to be exciting. I really am excited. I'm tired. I've been up since 5:30. Um, and just been like super doing stuff all day, as I'm sure all of you are as well.
All of you have been up doing stuff all day, probably.
Uh-huh.
Unless you're watching Twitch in the morning and this is
That
like your
noise?
morning routine,
Yeah,
then good morning to
good
you.
morning to you. So today we're going to talk about emotions. But I want to start it off by saying giving sort of a run through about how we approach emotions with our kiddos. And I'll also I just want to point out or remind or whatever, I don't know, say that I have an early childhood education degree, and so
And I do not.
yeah, and so a lot of these thoughts like do come from like things that they teach that I learned um just from working in classrooms and from learning about how to work in classrooms.
And on my end, like my perspective comes from like professional coaching, like one-on-one, like loosely based on therapeutic processes, but more, yeah,
Yeah.
like psychological and therapeutic processes, and like trying to take those and bring them to like a kid's level is kind of where my perspective comes from.
Yeah, and I think that it's also really important to remember that, I mean, just because I have an education in early childhood, I'm sorry, degree in early childhood education, like being a teacher is so different than being a parent. So I'm not saying that it doesn't help in some ways, but I'm just saying like it's not everything. And I think that also like coming from like my background in that, and also like having worked with children in childcare settings and preschools and stuff for like 10 plus years, coupled with like his coaching experience and knowledge, excuse me, I think that like really has led us to this place, to this place where we are at with emotions, and how we try to teach our kids about that. Specifically Ollie, because he's the older one, but Kai too, like when I self-talk with him and
Yeah,
ask him questions and engage with
yeah.
him. um so just like a quick overview, we really, really encourage Ollie to talk about his feelings. I It's borderline force, which sounds bad, but it isn't. Like it's not force. We don't force him to talk about it until he's ready. But the thing is that we always have to talk about our feelings.
Well, I think the difference is it's not like when we can tell he doesn't have the capacity for it. It's if we know that he has the capacity for it, we challenge him to think and feel his emotions. So like we don't like we can you can tell when a kid's like done, like when it's like they can't process anymore and it's time to just like synthesize or move on to something less like synapses forming. But yeah, like if he has the capacity for it at that moment and we haven't yet, like we actively encourage him to try to think and feel through his emotions.
Yes. Yeah. If he's like exhausted, tired, and he's just grumpy because he's tired, obviously, like we know. And and most of the time we'll say, "Oh, like, are you tired?" And he'll say, whatever. He might say no, he might deny it, but obviously, like, I think by us saying, "Oh, I think you might be tired,"
Yeah.
he's like, "I am tired. That's why I'm so grumpy." Because sometimes he does say, like,
Mm-hmm.
"I'm tired,"
Yeah.
and that's why I'm grumpy. But if he, for example, like everyone that I've heard for a long time, and I'm sure a lot of you have, and I'm sure you have. When Ollie turned two, everybody that we knew was like, "Oh, the terrible twos," but really,
They've been pretty terrible.
I don't.
But they're like, sorry, go ahead.
No, go on.
I was like, but as jokingly, like the like, and but I feel like the reason that it's terrible, like quote, terrible, is because like their brains are finally ready to process emotions, but they don't have a framework for understanding what's going on in their body and in their mind when they feel things. Like when you're mad, like when you have a thought that triggers the emotion of anger, like that's in your body. Like you feel adrenaline, you feel cortisol, you feel those things like coursing through you, like your heart starts beating faster. And for like a child that's never experienced that mixed with excitement or that mixed with sadness or that mixed with being tired, like that's like it's like it breaks the circuit. You know what I mean? Like it's just like an overload of like physical and mental stimulus, and so then that causes them to do a lot of different things. Like it could cause them to shut down like and go internally. It could cause them to start throwing things in a tantrum for like apparently no reason. You know what I mean? But it's like even positive emotions, if they feel excitement and happiness and surprise and like curiosity all at the same time, they can still then have like negative like negative outward like actions to your and like in your mind.
Or
Yeah.
or reactions that appear negative.
Yeah, that yeah.
Because obviously, like they're learning, and even though we may perceive it as like a negative,
Yeah. It's just
like
an
it's
effect
just
from the cause of the emotional like
yeah,
overload.
yeah. And Ollie, like he has only, I don't know, I really hope this doesn't bite us in the butt, but just like previously, like we're talking about
Mhm.
his previous year, he's almost two, he'll be two,
He's
he'll be
almost 3.
three
Yeah.
in May. But like really, there's only been less than 5 times where he's had what people would consider like a tantrum.
Yeah.
And most of those times, what we do, um, is we're there with him, giving him his space and letting him know like that when he's ready, we're there for him.
Mhm.
But we take that almost, I think, a step further, depending on if the tantrum like came on because he was like exhausted or
Mhm.
whatever. But if it didn't, um, then we say something like, okay, like when you're ready, we can talk about our feelings. I'm or whatever. I always say like I always say if you're not ready to talk about your feelings right now, that's okay, but we
Uh,
have to talk about them before you go to bed. We
well,
have to talk about them.
and normally we'd even go as far as to say like we can't do other things until we talk about your emotions, and that typically will spark another like smaller or maybe like exacerbate his current emotions, but overall like like it gets it like it if you don't say that, then what happens is he's going to go straight from, and probably for a lot of children, he's going to go straight from a tantrum to being 100% fine and then like trying to go do something else. And then if you try to stop and plant that seed, it's going to go straight back to the beginning of tantrum. Whereas if you
Mm-hmm.
like kind of plant that as they're tantruming, he
Mm-hmm.
might not hear everything, but like like, he or she will like remember, you know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Like that you said, like here we are, like we're laying here together until you're done, and then we can talk about your emotions before we like go do other stuff or have dinner or like bath or get ready for bed or play or whatever the thing is.
Yeah. And Ollie, like for some, who he is as a person, because he is his own person, like who he is, he's very closed off emotionally. I don't know, maybe that's something that's part of a personality trait, because we've always encouraged
Always,
him to
yeah.
be open about his emotions. But also maybe that comes with the territory, like I don't know, like Ollie's the only kid that I've had a parental experience with,
Mm-hmm.
and I tried to apply my teacher background where it fits, where we give him space to process his emotions, and then push it, push that boundary with, like, by making him talk about his emotions. But I think that like the reason that Jesse's bang on, I think that the reason that it is like the terrible twos is because they finally are starting to comprehend these emotions, and it's so confusing and it can be scary
Mhm.
when you don't know what's going on. You don't even have words to put to what you're feeling. And I think that like I think giving them a voice, giving them the words, and giving them the space to
Mhm.
process those feelings in a safe space. I think that's I think that's like I credit his lack of tantrums so
Mhm.
far to that.
Yeah,
Um,
he's had like four, maybe, like really bad, like wailing, like flopping around, like loosely swinging his head everywhere, hitting everything, completely incoherent, like tantrums. He's probably had like four.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and three of them weren't really recent. Like one of
No,
them was like we've talked about on the podcast before, like the time like just recently when my parents were here and we went down to your parents' house, and then he had like one in that period of time, like meltdown. But there's a lot going on.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, it makes sense
Yeah.
if we think about it and we really start to analyze when he's had his tantrums.
Mhm.
It's been when he's been the most overwhelmed
Yeah, which
already.
almost always also with like some level of exhaustion.
Yeah.
Like it's never like we wake up and there's like a huge meltdown, like for him at least.
Hmm.
Yeah. The closest is probably if we like on like an occasion he had like too much sugar in the morning. Like it might get close, but nothing like super bad.
No, and I like uh, in my early education classes, like they teach us to, or we learn about how to respect the children's feelings and give them the space to process that. And I think that's so important. And I see that a lot of parents already do that to some degree. And it's, and it, I mean, we could just stop there and he would develop,
Mm-hmm.
you know, but
Yeah.
I just being able to really talk about like how you're feeling, like, I think that's such an important
Yeah.
thing to learn.
Like socially and like what's there's another word for that. Like socially in like in the social construct we live in, having emotional intelligence is like it's you can't buy that. You can't like at some point like you just can't teach it because it takes practice. You know what I mean? And like you can practice it a lot to get better and better at emotional intelligence, but it's kind of like learning a language if you haven't developed that like if you haven't developed that language early on, you're always going to be interpreting it in your mind before you do it. You know what I mean? Like it won't just be a part of how you like interact with the world. If like you know how you were saying with like languages, like if you didn't learn them early on, you're always going to go from English, like for instance, like from English to Spanish and then say it in Spanish instead of it being like, oh, I hear Spanish. I don't have to interpret that to English and then English back to Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it's the same. Like emotional intelligence is like a language
Yeah.
that we're teaching him. Is like what, like where is that in your body? Like
Mm-hmm.
what are you feeling? And I think one of like so I think we've kind of touched on a few things. Like one, we give them space. Two, like we like quote unquote like force them, and like obviously it's not like hold them down and be like tell me what you're feeling, but it's like okay like let's reach a center, right? And but we will talk about this. Like we're not ignoring that this happened and just moving on. And then like I think a third thing that we try to do, and I feel like this one's really 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 hard when you not you but like in general like as a parent like you kind of know what they're feeling like a lot of times you can trace back, well, what triggered this? Oh, well, if that triggered it they must have been feeling this. But like then to not lead with like leading questions, like instead like I think it's really hard sometimes because you want to like help them get to the bottom of it, but ultimately it's like numbers, right? Like if you're teaching them numbers, you say this is a 3 and they're like 5, like you know what I mean? They're like this is a 3, 5. Like you have to like you can't say, "Oh, is this a 3?" because then they're like, if you do that enough, they're just going to learn to say yes. And that's all they've learned. They haven't actually learned the number. And so with them, it's the same like with emotions. It's like, what are you feeling right now? Like, ooh, what thought did you have that like made you mad? You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, like
after
what
they've
were
told
you
you.
thinking?
Yeah,
Not
because
like what were
emotions
you thinking?
emotions always come from thoughts. Like your body responds to things that your brain signals to produce, right? So it's like that's a good place to start, is like, hey, like, ooh, I can tell that like you're really going through something. Like what did we do, and like what did you think about what we said? You know what I mean? Like when you started getting mad, or like that's where it's hard, because then you're like labeling them as mad if they haven't already said that. So like if you're trying to say those things, like it's really really hard to keep that as like an open thing for them to discover that emotion. Like and at some point, probably not in the incident, but like outside of that, you talk about different emotions, and there's like I wish we could, maybe on our Twitter we'll post like this wheel that I found, or like I don't know if you found it, I can't remember who found it and shared it, but it's like the base emotions, and then there's like the subset off of the like happiness. Like within happiness there's like excitement and
Yeah,
intrigue, and within
my
anger
therapist showed
there's
it to me.
deceit and
Mm-hmm.
and neglect, or like feeling
Yeah.
disrespected, and like all of those come out of anger. You know what I mean? But
Mm-hmm.
anger is like the base emotion, and then there's like those complications within, like we're just working on like the base ones, and then like that's where we're at with Ollie right now, between 2 and 3 years old. um
Yeah.
but it's like, if you can teach those emotions, and like there's like books and resources where it like shows people that are like mad, and they see the faces, and like people that
Mm-hmm.
are like excited or happy, or like, so it's like, I think from a young age they learn those things, kind of even at like Kai's age.
Yeah.
When they're reading books, they see those emotions and connect those with
And when they see, yeah.
facial features of like their parents and stuff. And that's why we've said in a podcast, I'm like rambling, I'm so
I know
sorry,
you're doing
but
okay.
like we said in a podcast earlier, that it's like we don't try to hide our anger, but we always make sure that we work through it, or like post fact work through it with Ollie.
Mm-hmm.
Like, hey, remember when mom and dad were like really mad at each other yesterday? Well, we talked about our emotions, and this is what Sam was feeling, and this is what mom was feeling, this was what dad was feeling,
Mm-hmm.
and so he kind of understands that resolution of those emotions.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so like we those so yeah, so far we have like space, like giving them space, like actually talking about them, and like setting that boundary, like we will talk about your feelings and what happened. Like we're not just going to ignore it and like chalk it up to like you being in your terrible twos. Like cuz like it is about that, but like we're not settling
But
for
it's
that.
so much deeper.
Yeah.
Like that's just like the general like it's a terrible twos,
Yeah.
but like it's actually talking but we're actually delving into like
Hmm.
why, perhaps like what's going on internally for them to have such a hard time.
Yeah.
And
Well, and then so
also,
teaching them about emotions,
yeah.
and not leading them to an emotion, like trying to help them come
I
there,
when
like get
it's
there
just
on their own.
when it's just me and him, like I definitely start to introduce a couple of emotions,
Mhm.
but it's only because well, so he, like I said, like we said, has a really hard time opening up for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And so it takes him, and it gets better. Like it's getting better. Like he absolutely hates going in to talk about his feelings when he gets mad and, he gets to that point, 100% like when I say, okay, let's go talk about our feelings, or if he does something and I say, okay, we're going to go talk about our feelings. Normally somebody stays with Kai, or if Kai is like asleep, or if somebody else is helping us and has Kai.
So sorry.
If somebody else is helping us or has Kai, then then we both go in together. But or sometimes Jesse's whatever focus. I usually say to him, you know, he's crying like hard, and I say we're gonna talk about our feelings, and he's crying and he hates it.
Yeah.
And I always say it's okay to feel, it's okay to cry. I say it's okay to cry, and then I also say it's
Yeah.
okay to feel sad, because no matter what, like I feel like even if he's crying because he's angry, he still feels sad a
Hmm.
little bit. And so I think it's safe to say if he's crying, even if it's from anger, I always say it's okay to feel sad. It's okay to feel mad.
Yeah.
I say those are the two basic
Yeah.
ones, but
You
like it's
know,
okay to feel those things.
it might be cool to have like the cards, like have cards that have like a face with the emotion,
Hmm.
and be able to say like because I think sadness is always a part of it. So it's like, okay, it's really good to like reaffirm, like you're saying, like acknowledge and validate their emotions and say like it's okay that you're feeling these things. Like you don't have to cover these up because they're bad. Like they're not bad. Like you're just feeling
Hmm.
emotions. Um, and
I
like
think that part is so
yeah,
important,
it's
especially with
so
Ollie
important.
right
Even I
now,
mean,
because
even
he
with
just doesn't.
adults, you know what I mean. Like even at our
No, you're
level.
right. You're right. Yeah, like adults always. I mean, Ollie, like if he is ever mad or upset, he tries to distract himself by
Hmm.
picking a new toy or picking a new activity because he doesn't want to feel. And he's actually told me in his own words. Obviously, what I'm gonna say isn't his own
Uh
word in
huh.
his own words. I can't remember his own words verbatim, but like in his own words, he's told me that he doesn't like to feel sad and he doesn't like to feel mad. And and I said, like yeah, that's okay. I don't Nobody likes to feel sad or mad. And he says that and he's told me that he wants to get like a new activity or a new toy so he doesn't feel those things. And I say, and I've said to him, this is what I say when he says that. I say to him, in order to get rid of those feelings for good, we have to talk about them.
Hmm.
And it's like he's finally like a little bit like I've
Yeah.
noticed that he's finally been starting to be a little bit more like hesitantly, like definitely not like
Hmm.
on his own, but like yeah, like I say, if you really want to get rid of those feelings, then you need to talk about them. That's the only way that you're going to
Hmm.
100% get rid of those feelings. If you don't talk about them, they're just going to stay inside you and they're going to build up and they're going to build up. And even if you play with a new toy and even if you do a new activity, like you're going to have that feeling still inside your body. And in order to get that feeling out of your body,
Hmm.
we need to talk about them.
Yeah. And I kind of want to clarify too, like we do all these things and it's not like an instantaneous like process. And I'm sure like I don't really have to say that, but I'm just using it as like a disclaimer, like in case parents are trying these things and feel frustrated. Like let's say that like once a day for every day he has big feelings, right? And like let's just say that's an average. Like some days he doesn't really have any and some days he has two or three or four or five, and like usually they're like connected and they just like it doesn't go away until we talk about it. um like probably once every 2 or 3 weeks, like there's just like a major like beautiful breakthrough where you can see that like something clicks and like he just feels free, you know what I mean? And it's like everything's just better for like days. Like it's like he's living on a high of like I understand my emotions. Like I get where that came from. Like mom and dad said it's okay. Like we talked about it and they understand me, and we like it's not like we don't come to a resolution of like, oh, because you did this like you can get this, or like it's not like, oh, we understand you were sad about your toy so let's give you your toy. Like it's just like we understood his emotions, and he understood them and processed it, and like that is like gratification enough for him. And this is coming from a kid that doesn't like that his like basic response is like shut down.
Mm-hmm.
And so like I feel
Yeah.
like for children who, and like I don't, maybe that's also a part of like the terrible twos, and most children feel that, I don't know, but for children that maybe just don't understand their emotions but don't dislike them, or like that maybe their automatic response is to cry and like reach out to somebody, like that's not all his like is like conceal and hide and like get away
Conceal, don't feel.
don't let them see. um
100% that's him.
but I think Kai's gonna be the opposite. I feel like
I mean,
he's
he
gonna
might
like
be.
he's like at like everything he's going to like cry and run to us. You know what I mean?
I
Like
do think
every
that,
little
yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
And so I like for kids like that, like I feel like this could be like it's rewarding for both, but you might see the reward on like a different scale with kids that like want
Or in a
to
different, yeah, just in
engage
a
with
different way.
those.
Yeah.
Like they're like, yeah, but
Hmm.
like I just like it's hard. Excuse me. I need some water. It's hard, but like when you see those breakthroughs, it's like so freaking amazing to watch them
Yeah.
like just like feel lighter. Whereas like if we hadn't had those conversations, those might be things that like come up later
In
in like
his life.
therapy
I
and
was
like you know what I
talking to
mean?
my
Yeah.
therapist about that. I was talking to my therapist about like all of these things and about like how we deal with his emotions and stuff because specifically like maybe, you know, I don't know everybody's specific life, but like maybe people when they're adults, especially because I think we're at the cusp of this new generation where it's so crazy. Okay, like I don't want to get like too deep because I definitely this topic is like I could talk for hours about this topic, but I definitely feel like our generation, like I'm in my 30s, we're both in our 30s
Hmm.
and I but like the way that like we were raised still was more like children will obey their parents 100%, like for the most part, you know? Maybe Jesse's parents were a little bit more lenient, but that's another conversation. Focus. Okay. And so,
Hmm.
so like us as parents, like we're at the cusp of this like new generation of parents that's like really starting to teach their kids things that now our society is ready um to start to start teaching their kids. Do you know what I mean? Like before there were lots of other things like my parents, my mom when she was growing up, she had to like for real she had to
Yeah,
walk
I
down
mean
like a
like
mile to get
developing
like a
nations
well.
are like are less prevalent now. Yeah, like more nations are developed, like economies are more stable, and obviously like pandemics and things. But we haven't had like a world war, a Great Depression, and we've had like a consistent war. Um, but like, but nothing that like totally threatens our everyday lives on a consistent basis.
I mean, I'm grateful and I know that
Yeah,
there are countries out there
yeah,
that
for
do face
sure.
that and I'm not trying to like
No,
belittle that in any way,
not at
shape or
all. But
form.
like from like a hierarchy of needs, like like for people who have their basic needs met, and like for communities that have their basic needs met, like they move on to those other needs, and like I feel like those needs start to become more like what do you want to do versus like you need to work the way that your parents did because like
Mhm.
that's our family way and like there's no other
Yeah.
options for you. um
Yeah. And I
yeah.
mean, there's still families that are like that out there. And I'm not saying
Hmm.
that it's the wrong way to go at all. I'm just saying, like,
It's just based on needs,
yeah.
like not
Hmm.
not on who's better or
No, no,
worse,
no,
like
no,
it's just
no,
based
not at
on
all.
needs.
Yeah. And so I do feel like just as a whole in general, like our world is in a different place socially, for the most
On like
part.
like on like an average, like a bell curve kind
Yeah.
of average.
Where a lot more families are able to raise their children a little bit differently. Excuse me, like not I don't want to say like differently, but like well yeah, differently. Like for example, like
Hmm.
when I was growing up, there was a certain way to like discipline your children,
But when
you know.
your parents and my parents didn't have to worry too much about technology until we were like preteen.
Yeah, there's just like
You know what I
differences that
mean?
are gonna happen. Like my like when, you know, our grandparents were kids, they had to make their own bread probably.
They didn't
It
have
was
like
like
washers and dryers,
super, yeah,
probably
like
things
just
like that.
things like that. If they wanted
Hmm.
something, they probably had to make it or, you know, like go to great lengths. But we have a lot more um things that are available to us. And so like
Yeah.
because our hierarchy of needs is in a different place, we're able to start really like looking at kids and their development in a different way. And and I feel like this is our, like, we're at the cusp of that. Like, we're the beginning of that generation. Because I know there's some parents out there who probably agree with me, and maybe some parents out there who just not even ever thought of, like, of
Mm-hmm.
thought of this. You know, there's lots of things that I've never thought about. So I'm not like judging in any way, shape, or form. Um, but it's like we're at this cusp where we're starting to realize how important those early years in a child early childhood years are. Like, they're so vital. Like, people didn't used to think that babies, like, what did they do? Nothing. But they're growing and they're learning every
Mm-hmm.
single day. You know what I'm saying? And like all throughout their early childhood,
Yeah.
they are developing these building blocks that that is going to these building blocks that are basically turning them into the people that they will become, like the way
Yeah.
that they view the world. Like, like right now in the early years is when you're building those building
Mm-hmm.
blocks of everything that they are and
Yeah.
how they see the world. And so, like, taking a step into that, like, they're their own people. They're not like half of a person. They're a whole person and they're figuring themselves out. And
Mm-hmm.
it's hard enough to do that as an adult. Of course it's going to be hard to do that as a kid who doesn't have the words
And
or
the
the
framework in any
mhm.
way, yeah.
Yeah. And so um so that's another thing that really like propelled me personally,
Mm-hmm.
probably us, but I
Mm-hmm.
don't want to speak for you, but like that propelled me to want to give Ollie and Kai when he's older that space to really be able to talk about their emotions, to process their
Mm-hmm.
feelings, to really be open to that sort of thing because it's so important. Mental health is
Yeah.
insanely important.
Well, I think for me, I mean, that's a really important point. But like, if I'm thinking about like my catalyst for us being on the same page, like, it's not like we didn't even have to talk about this as parents of like, hey, like emotions are important. Like, oh, are they? Like, oh yeah, like here's why they're important. Here's what we have to do. Like, we just like both are like this.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, we didn't. Like it really wasn't even a conversation
No.
like before we were parents or during or anything. Like it just like naturally unfolded this way for us. Like
Mm-hmm.
that we were like we feel strongly that having these conversations with our children are really important. And I think for me, that catalyst was like my background in coaching. So I do business coaching and like personal coaching for like health and like mental health is part of that. And so like I live for those conversations and I said that to Sam before we had Ollie. I was like, I just cannot wait for him before we even knew we were getting hyped, but now them to like get to an age where like they have tantrums and I can sit down and have a conversation with them and be like and ask them those questions and like I don't care how long it takes. Like
And it takes time
yeah,
sometimes. It takes a good long time, like
yeah.
a good long
But
time.
so that's I think I just love those conversations. I know how impactful they've been in my life, like me receiving coaching and how impactful they've been in my clients' lives, both like personally and professionally. So like to be able to offer that to a kid, like and maybe like I think about it kind of as like every parent has the things that they're like excited for and that they want to teach their children and like children normally don't care or like aren't excited by it. So like I don't expect him to like really understand. Like he grew up with that, so he doesn't have anything to compare it to. Like to really understand if that's valuable to him or them, like over
Well,
time.
he does compare it. He does compare it, I think,
Mhm.
to other things. And I'm not saying that like he didn't. I'm just saying like when he is around my parents or your parents or
True.
other people
Yeah.
that we love or whatever, like in general, he experiences like different ways that people do things. And
Yeah.
so he does have
That's
that
true.
like sort
That's
of.
true. Um, I'd say like one thing that I just realized we've left out is like for is and like I think we can debate like the healthiness of this, but having like a comfort tool when they're going through those times is like really helpful from bringing them down. And like the only thing that comforts Ollie are his pacifiers, which he's approaching 3, which is when orthodontists and dentists say like they should stop using them because it can start hurting the development of their like jaw structure and their teeth. Um and so did I say orthopedic? I meant
I
orthodontic.
don't
I don't.
know. I
Anyways,
don't
whatever I said. But like but that's one of the things, like if he just cannot come down from that place, like every single time he's at a major tantrum, like that's helped. You know what I mean? And so like if your kid has like a blankie or a stuffed animal, like those things can like bring them down enough to be able to talk about them in the
Yeah.
moment. Um, and we've tried tips and other things like trying to bring them down logically, but at that point,
When they get to that
take deep
point.
breaths,
Mm-hmm.
like balloon breaths where they lift their hands when they breathe in and breathe out, and
Mm-hmm.
like like sometimes with Ollie humor works. Like if like I pretend to like stub my toe or sneeze or something, like that can like pull him out enough to get enough like connected like logic in to then like bring the situation down. But normally normally it's like just his pacifier.
When he's
um
at
at
that
that,
point,
yeah.
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 And if we are able to like pull him out, to like a secluded area or whatever, when before he gets to that point, it's we normally don't have to resort to like
Hmm.
bringing in a binky. Um, but if it works, it works, and he's been doing really well letting go of his binky.
Yeah.
He
And
only
I
gets it
mean,
at night, and then he loses it at night all the time. Anyway, he
yeah.
like as soon as he passes out, it falls out of his mouth. So.
True. So really, like, I wonder how much time he actually has it in now. And
Hmm.
like, yeah, I think that'd be an interesting topic for another podcast. Like, it's not something we're like experts at, and it would just be more like a putting it out there kind of thing. But like
Yeah.
kids going through transitions that are necessary, but they don't want to go through yet. Like, what are like strategies and ways, like potty training or
Yeah, letting
like
go of a binky.
yeah,
I mean,
like
honestly, if he had a
things
blankie, I'd just let him keep his blankie till he
forever.
forever, like for
Yeah,
real.
yeah,
No
but
judgies.
and again, like I don't know, like what other scenarios we could think of that, like a lot of them are like more society driven than
Hmm.
like individual like kids needs driven. But then like, anyways, we don't have to talk about that
Like I think
right
also
now.
like in general, like we're talking about our emotions with Ollie, and we're pushing it. I just
Oh,
noticed my socks don't match. We're talking about in general, just like emotions with Ollie and why we push it and why we do the things that we do. Also, because you have like we have to, not that you guys don't or anything, but like we're thinking about like who they're gonna become in the future. Like who we're basically like if you're a parent with you're basically creating the next generation. You're raising the next generation. Like, who do you want the next
mhm.
generation to be? What do you want it to be like?
Yeah,
And ultimately, for us, and it's a personal choice. Like, there's no wrong answer.
true.
Well, I mean, like,
Well, well, I
but
mean
I
that could
generally there's
be
no wrong answer.
even that could be arguable. Like as a disclaimer, right? Like no matter what we do as parents, no matter what we do, like it's going to have like an equal and opposite reaction. You know what I mean? Like we're building certain characteristics, but that means that other characteristics aren't being built, and we don't know who they're supposed to be in the future, like
Mm-hmm.
what their life's going to bring. So like we don't really know whether the characteristics we're building are going to help them with with what their journey is. We're just doing our best.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just want to put that disclaimer in that like if you're doing your best, like and like you are putting the time and energy in as a parent, like an active parent who's there, like you're
Mm-hmm.
there, like
If you're doing
even
your
just
best,
being
yeah.
there, you're doing like you're
I I see what you're saying, but I meant
I don't
like
know what you yeah.
I meant I meant like illegal things, like things that like
Yeah.
crimes, like if you abuse your children or whatever.
Oh.
Not that you do. This is
No.
taking a really
No, no, you're not
I'm
as
so
like
tired. I'm so
nothing
sorry.
about
But
what
I'm
you're
just saying
saying is
like
assuming that
I'm saying
they're doing that.
there is no wrong answer except for like abuse.
Yeah.
You know, that's all I'm
And I
saying.
think that I think it's so like it's so crazy to me that even children that are abused, which obviously we 1000% do not condone any form of abuse, like
I gotta go. It's Kai, but I
um
trust you.
that like kids, like children survive and thrive in spite of us, and like a child that's been neglected and abused can go on to be an amazing fucking human being. You know what I mean? Like it's crazy to me to think just how resilient we are as humans, even as children, when we're like so vulnerable emotionally and physically. It's freaking nuts. It's so nuts. So like um now that Sam's gone, I can see what I really think. uh, so like, so we're kind of everything we've talked about has been like general strategies that I think work really well at almost any age, but like we've been focusing on toddler, like going kind of back to infant. I feel like when they're infants and their brains aren't ready for like higher level conversation or being able to talk through and learn words for their emotions, like you can still, like Sam was saying, like you can still talk to them, like, oh, are you sad, like are you hurt because XYZ, like, oh, like are you having big feelings because of this, like you can do those things just so they're hearing the words and like the structure, but they're not like obviously going to be able to like respond and synthesize that yet. Like depending on, I guess, like if maybe if you have like a really like superior infant intellectually and emotionally, like at the end of infanthood, but like for the most part, I feel like, and maybe I'll like double check with Sam when she comes back. Like I feel like for us the most important thing when Ollie was an infant and now that Kai is an infant is just like that piece just of acknowledging and validating their feelings. And then I think this goes a lot with like sleep training too, which like we don't really do in a traditional way. Like we like having them there. Like we're not trying to transition them. I think that if they wanted to, they could, but um, like like sleep training and acknowledging and validating emotions in terms of like the strategies for sleep training of like letting them know that you're there but giving them the space to experience those emotions and realize that they're okay. Like I think that's probably a big piece of emotional development. And the thing that always got me about sleep training, and like again, like I'm not a scientist, like I haven't studied sleep training, I haven't like looked into like the deep research, but like personally the thing about sleep training that like I'm not like completely, and like I'm not completely sure about, like from like an old school like sleep training method, and like the methods that they used was like obviously we turned out fine. Like I was sleep trained, like I turned out fine. Like I'm a human, like a productive member of society. But like the thing that I'm thinking about as a parent all the time when I'm thinking about their emotional health is like whether they're with me or like they're at school or with their grandparents, like at any point they can develop the mental pattern of like something happens to them and then they create a summary or scenario or like conclusion based off of that, and that becomes their new truth. And so we're always trying to create situations, well, not create situations, like you can't control situations, but like in any situation we try our best to talk about the emotions so that the the conclusions and like rules about life and beliefs that Ollie is developing, and hopefully like Kai too, are ones that they have like as much as possible like consciously developed. Because a lot of times, like if you know about therapy or coaching and like a lot of things that we go through in mental health, the 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 things that the things that we're exploring are our beliefs and our like memories of events that have occurred, and you can't change the events, but you can forgive them. You can change your like perception slash belief of what happened and what the reasoning was and what that means about you and like your worth as a human. So like the same things apply to kids, like as you're like kind of at any stage, whether they're like obviously at infants they don't have the frameworks. That's what I'm saying. Like I think the two most important things, and Sam's back. Like you can correct me or not correct me, but you can like expand on this if you think. But I think the two most important pieces for infants in terms of like emotional intelligence are giving them the space to feel their emotions and just acknowledging and validating that they're important by giving them love. But I was saying I was kind of going more into like just now, like therapy and coaching, and when you're working on like the pieces internally where like you're blocked by something or something that's like a trauma or haunting you, like at the basic level what you're doing is you're exploring memories and like you're reshaping how you feel about them. Like you can't change what's happened, but you're reshaping the mental pattern you developed, and you're reshaping your beliefs about that situation and what that means about you as a human and your worth, or like the person that did it, so that you can let go and forgive and heal those things and not let that be stealing energy from you and like dictating the things in your life that it's like preventing you from being able to do or not do.
Yeah.
um
Yeah, that's
and
actually that's exactly almost pretty much what my
yeah,
therapist and I were talking
yeah.
about, and what she said, that like by giving him the tools, giving them the
Mm-hmm.
tools to like really explore their emotions right now when they're just forming,
Yeah,
like potentially, who knows? Obviously,
yeah.
we can't tell the future,
Yeah.
but but potentially, like maybe they won't have all of the hangups that we did when we were kids, and our parents would be like, "Boys don't cry."
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Stop being a
toughen up,
baby.
toughen up that upper lip or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Like, deal with it. Like, you're gonna be fine.
Yeah.
And like, while I do feel like, to an extent, like we do say that to Ollie, we say like, you can handle this, but we go further. We don't just like leave it there and say you can handle it. I don't know how. Figure that out
Mm-hmm.
yourself. I was thinking about this when I was up there with Kai. Like, we're doing this. You probably moved on a little bit, but like we're doing this because like we want, in the end, like obviously we want Ollie to be happy and fulfilled and in whatever he wants to do with his life. But more so than that, like we want him to be able to feel like he can be unapologetically himself.
Mm-hmm.
Like he can love himself. Like this is gonna be like a weird tangent, but just go with me on it. Like in our house, we cuss in front of our children. We do, in context, not like just dropping all the f bombs and all the
Mm-hmm.
cuss words just willy nilly. We do it in context, and yeah, we don't. It's fine. We do not say certain words in our house. We
You
do
don't
not
say
say
derogatory cuss words.
no, 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 no. We say like we don't. I absolutely, and Jesse used to say this a lot when we were first together,
I want to know it. I
and
don't even know what you're saying.
but like I got rid of that habit.
What did I used to say?
But you used to say stupid a lot,
Oh,
and we
it's
like
like,
if you're
oh, that's
talking
so
about something,
stupid.
like if you're talking about something,
Yeah.
that's fine.
What?
Like if you're talking about like something,
Oh, yeah,
that's
yeah.
fine.
I would be like, I kind of like jokingly to myself, but like not like, but I'd like, let's say that I was playing a game and I'd be like, oh my gosh, I'm so stupid. Like, why didn't I think of that?
Yeah, and we just don't do that. I
Mhm.
don't let Jesse say that. Well, I told him from the beginning, like when
That
he
you
started
didn't
saying it,
like
I
it,
was
and I
like,
was
I
like, yeah,
didn't,
you
I
know what,
don't
that
like that. You're
reasoning makes
not
sense.
stupid,
Yeah.
And I don't think that our kids, I don't think that Ollie has ever heard any of like
Yeah.
I never say it. Like my
Like,
parents growing
yeah.
up, like we weren't allowed to say stupid,
No
idiot,
derogatory and
whatever. We
no
just don't. We just don't.
degrading.
And if you do,
Yeah.
that's totally fine. Like I'm
In
not
our,
judging
yeah.
you in any way, shape, or form. But just for us, like we never say, "Oh, that's so like you're so stupid for doing that," or
Yeah.
"What an idiot." We never say that because um we're not. We're not idiots and we're not stupid. And we might have trouble sometimes, but we're all learning this life together. I've
Hmm.
never been a parent of two children before. I had Kai,
You were
you know,
yesterday. That was
before
before.
I had Kai, and
Yeah.
was never a parent before I had Ollie, and I was never, you know, 25 before I was 25. Do you know what I'm saying? Like you're constantly learning, and
Mhm.
I just don't think it's very like
Yeah.
uplifting to yourself. Like what kind of thoughts do
Yeah.
you have about yourself if you call yourself stupid all the time, or if you call yourself an idiot all the time, or you feel comfortable calling other people that like all the time? That I mean,
Hmm.
I just think
You know
about like
what?
what kind of things like do you think about yourself? And I don't know you. Whoever all is watching, I don't know you, but
Mhm.
you're not stupid and you're not an idiot and you're doing your absolute best.
There was this quote, like it was a direct quote, from a meditation like person, and I think this is like secondhand. I think Chris went, my business partner Chris went to like a meditation retreat thing, and then this stuck with me though from like what he told me. Like I remember it like word from word, that like they did a meditation about like the thoughts about themselves that they had in their mind, and the guy said that the that there's some of us who treat ourselves better than we treat others, and there's some of us that treat ourselves and others equally in terms of like how we think. Like if I, like, let's say that I like back into my garbage can with the car, like I'm gonna be like, oh my god, Jesse, you're so dumb. Like but if somebody else does that, I'm gonna be like, oh, they just made a mistake. So like the majority of us treat ourselves worse than we treat other people. Like in our minds, we treat ourselves terrible. But like if you think about your best friend, and if they did the things that you're down on yourself about, you don't think that of them.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah.
And like I feel like getting to that place where you treat yourself and other people equally, like maybe that's kind of what we're building towards, where it's like
Yeah.
we're teaching we're teaching Ollie, and we're going to teach Kai that like it's okay to make mistakes, and it's okay to be the people that they are unapologetically. Like if Ollie is a silly dude that likes men and like wants to be a professional rapper, like that's his truth. Like live it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
if that's who he wants to be, like he does not have to apologize for that being the experience that he grew into and wants to have in this life. Like that's it's not our job to like judge the things he is and decide whether that's something we wanted for him or not. You know what I mean? Like and I think that's kind of like maybe the difference between a lot of like our generation and above, and like that kind of hierarchy of needs thinking, like we're in a world where we don't have to protect our children from being like to be normal, like like there isn't like we're in a society where normal isn't necessary. It's normal isn't about being normal or like everyone else anymore. And like it's acceptable to not be.
Yeah.
Like if you think about all of the people that, not all of them, like for all of us, but like a lot of the people we look up to or admire are people that are just like okay being themselves on stage and like
Mhm.
speaking their truth and like being who they are and like not giving a shit what people think about that.
Mhm.
And so I feel like all of this talk around emotions and like why is it important to like allow your kids to feel emotions, like maybe like, and again, like we could get to his teen years and be like, holy shit, we created a monster. That was not the right way to go about it.
I
Research now
mean,
is saying don't let them feel anything. It's better for them. I don't
conceal,
know.
don't feel.
I don't know, like that could like anything can happen,
Yeah.
right? But like I feel like the approach we're taking is with the intention of building children that have confidence in who they are and don't have to rely on us or other people for affirmation that they're good enough, or that like what they want to do isn't like worthwhile. Like that they can
Yeah.
think and feel that in themselves without like needing the validation of others.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um yeah, because at the end of the day, I want Ollie to feel like he can do anything no matter what it is.
Hmm.
Um that's just really important to us. to make
I
sure
feel
that
like
he doesn't
maybe
feel.
that's every parent, and then the strategies. Not every parent, but like almost every parent that you know. I don't. I always have to preface that. Like obviously, I don't know every parent in the entire world, but I feel like most parents want the best for their children, and
Yeah.
they
No,
want
I'm
their
not.
children to
Yeah.
be able to do anything, and it's like the strategies that they went about that are just different.
No, yeah, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that that wasn't like.
Sorry, I didn't need to.
No, I would. Yeah, I mean, all parents. I mean, I'm sure. Like my parents, 100% made me feel like I could do anything, that I ever set my mind to, and I'm not saying like.
But they like really, really wanted you to go to school because to them that meant that you'd be able to do anything you wanted to. You know what I mean?
Well,
Like that's
yeah,
what I'm saying. Like the
yeah.
things that we
No, but
want for
I'm
our
saying
children.
like no, yeah, like that's
Mhm.
something that they wanted for me, but they made me feel like they raised me with this like inherent belief in myself that I could do anything. Do you know what I'm saying? Like of
Yeah,
course they wanted things for us. Of course
yeah, yeah,
would want things for Ollie. And I feel like that's normal, but
yeah,
just because I want something for him doesn't mean that I'm going to push him to do it, you know?
yeah.
And so unless it's like, you know, hygienic or like something that's
Like,
like,
bro, you can't live here and smell like that anymore.
you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
something like, unless it's
Uh,
something like that, you know?
yeah.
But yeah, so.
Mhm. Yeah. So then we obviously have never been parents of over 3-year-olds. So we don't necessarily know what we're going to do or what our strategies will be.
I mean, we'll definitely keep you posted.
But I feel like just like looking forward and maybe putting this in a time capsule. Um, like for me, like if I'm thinking about like how do I want to continue to allow Ollie to like find himself and be more confident, like and like build like confidence and not self doubt or um like what's the word con self when you're self conscious, yeah, self consciousness. But that sounds like a good term. I don't know.
To feel self conscious. You don't
Yeah,
want
to
him to
feel
feel
self
self
conscious,
conscious.
like and to be able to like understand his emotions and like intelligently manage those.
Mm-hmm. And Kai.
Yeah, and Kai. Well, always closer. So
Yeah,
yeah.
I know that. Me too. I do it too.
Um, I feel like it's gonna be just continuing to deepen those conversations as we see that he's ready for it. Like, oh, like he's ready to like we were talking about that chart where it's like there's the basic emotions, and then off of happy there's like kind of like 5 or 6 subsets, and off of those subsets there's like 12 subsets, and it's like a big wheel.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like we can talk about more intricate emotions, and then we can start actually asking him like open-ended questions, like not just exploring the emotion, but exploring then what to do with that emotion, and
Mm-hmm.
like if he wants to stay there versus if he wants to move to a higher like
Mm-hmm.
vibration of emotion that's
Yeah.
like more what he wants. Like, oh well, do you want to be mad, or are you only mad because you wanted this thing? Well, like, well, if you want that thing and you're mad, like what's the bridge between that? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, but what if it's something that you just can't get? You know what I mean? Like, how do you work with that emotion? You know, because like eventually he's going to get to the point where maybe like just like acknowledging and understanding the emotion isn't like good enough to move past it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like he's like, oh, like I feel acknowledged and validated, but I still have this emotion, but I still don't want it. Like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, well then what do you do with that? Like then we develop like strategies.
Yeah.
And so I feel like maybe that's the next step. And then oof, like I'm so excited, but like I'm going to like feel like some days I will regret saying that and feeling that. Like I'm so excited for their like crazy teenage years. You know what I mean? Like because the emotions are based off of like the emotions are based off of chemicals that they can't do anything about. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? And like they can't like the things they're feeling aren't going to make sense to anyone that's not a teenager.
Well, like
You know what
I
I mean?
like people who menstruate like go through that
True.
freaking every
True.
month. People who are pregnant or have gone through
Yeah,
pregnancy.
go through like way like intense like emotional swings.
And
Like
there's like
yeah,
tons of other um
but you know, yeah.
diagnoses and disorders where like chemical imbalances
That's true.
occur.
And you know what the difference with a lot of those is? Like I don't know about like I can't like all of the psychological like disorders, but like the difference with pregnancy and menstruation are that like you're already past a social construct age where you're like trying to figure out like who you are as a human. Like and we're all always figuring
No,
that out.
girls start, well,
We're all
people who
always figuring that
menstruate
out. But
start to menstruate at like 11, 12 years.
12, yeah.
So that's like not, there's like a
Oh no,
bunch.
I know that, but I'm saying like the emotions, like the emotion, not the chemical things you're going through when you're a teenager also coincide with like huge like developmental leaps and like you're wanting to belong socially
I see,
and
I see.
seeing where you fit into a social structure. Whereas
Mhm.
before that, you're an individual who's like being like kind of guided through a social like and like when you're a teen, you're like, is this a social structure I want? Like I want to be a part of that social structure, but those people don't like me. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Like so you're going through all of these other things like on top of all of, and like
He's like smiling,
I'm
but
so
I'm like
excited. I know that I'm in for a terror.
petrified.
I know that I'm in for a terror because like I gave my parents the worst run of it. Like I was like everything that like a parent would not want to happen at that time. And I was experimenting with alcohol and marijuana early, you know what I mean? And like getting into groups of friends that maybe weren't the best like health mentally for me or even like danger physically, you know what I mean? Like everything, like just like I couldn't imagine being my parents at that time. I couldn't imagine. So I'm excited for it though, because I know that I karma's coming my way. But I'm
I'm not
also excited
excited.
to see how I handle it and like how we all come out the other side. Like as long as they don't die or like lose a limb or like
I'm most
get
excited for school age.
uh,
That's like my
yeah.
jam. School
We're
age,
gonna
like
have Ollie.
elementary
I'll be right back.
is my I'm like there. I'm there for it. I freaking love elementary school kids. Like I love them. They are beautiful souls. Um on that note, I think I don't know what we're going to talk about next week, but stay tuned and we'll let you know for sure. So thank you so much for joining us for our episode 8 of For the Parents podcast, and we will be back here next Tuesday for another episode.